We have about 100 active members, and we put on a variety of programs such as startup lunches, hackathons, the Entrepreneurial Thought Leader Speaker Series, and our annual Startup Career Fair. However, our flagship program by far is the annual Basis Challenge Startup Competition. We have hosted this program for over 2 decades in its various iterations, and we are so excited to have everyone here today for the finale event for 2015. This event would not have been possible without the help of so many people, and I want to start by thanking all of our sponsors who have donated the prize money for today's event. So please join me in thanking our sponsors, starting with our platinum sponsor, Microsoft, our gold sponsors, including Morgan Thaler, Sequoia, Lightspeed Venture Partners, Founder.org, Oracle, WilmerHale, Perkins Coie, Accenture, Samsung, as well as our silver sponsors, Maris Capital, Silicon Valley Bank, Dropbox, and Fenwick & West LLP, as well as the entire Basis team for organizing today's event. Please join me in thanking them. In fact, we are lucky enough today to have Xing Wu, a member of our long-running sponsor, Morgan Thaler, to introduce our keynote speaker today. So I'm going to hand the microphone over to Xing so she can go ahead and tell you a little bit about him.
Hey everybody. I'm not Greg Schott, I'm Xing Wu, and we are big believers in what you guys are doing here today. That is growing and fueling the next generation of startup founders and talent. We are so much a believer that we have endowed the first prize at this event for more than a decade in the name of David Morgan Thaler, the founder of Morgan Thaler Ventures. Many of you today met Gary Morgan Thaler. Raise your hand, Gary. Gary was a judge at the finals round, and Gary is David's son, who is a notable entrepreneur in his own right. David, by the way, is 95 years old and will be 96 in August, which is amazing. He still comes to the office and is our gadfly. So the next session is a real treat, and let me tell you why. One of the investments out of Morgan Thaler is a company called Mulesoft, and we have Greg Schott, the CEO of Mulesoft here. We are pairing him with Gary Little, a lot of Garys at our firm. So Gary Little led the Series A investment in Mulesoft in 2006 and has served on the Mulesoft's board ever since. Gary is a general partner at the Canvas Venture Fund. And some of you may have heard that the Midas list, or the Forbes Midas list, just last month named the Canvas Venture Fund a top VC firm to watch. That's a pretty big deal for us, especially since we are only 2 years old. So Gary is a co-founder of Canvas along with Rebecca Lin, Paul Xiao, and Gary Morgan Thaler. And they continue to serve on the boards of the Morgan Thaler companies like Mulesoft, as well as a few companies I'm sure you've heard of, like Lending Club, Evernote, Doximity. They continue to serve on those boards, but all new investments will be coming out of Canvas. So we know startups are not for the faint of heart, and we applaud all you brave people here who are drawn to them. With that said, let me introduce 2 brave souls who are startup fanatics. One is Greg Schott, and once he's done with his keynote, Gary Little will come up. Thank you.
Can you hear me back? I'm supposed to be mic'd up. Does that work? Oh, there we go. Okay. So first, it's exciting to be here. I love looking around and seeing all the energy. I hear that I am standing between you and the prizes. So we'll try and make this short. But I do want to give you a quick overview. And Gary and I are going to spend some time up here. But I want to give you a quick overview of who we are as a company. So we believe, and as you're seeing in the market today, all companies are becoming composite companies. So it used to be these big monolithic banks and insurance companies and airlines. Everything now is kind of being broken up, and they're having to talk to mobile devices and SaaS applications, and everything is being broken into pieces. When you do that, you end up with this mess of connectivity underneath those, all of that connection that you're trying to make. And what we do, very simply, is we provide a platform that sits in the middle of all this, so that people in these large organizations can bring in new applications, can launch a mobile app, can bring in a SaaS application very quickly. And we basically we call it an agility layer. So we give an agility layer to a large bank or a large hospital so that they can very quickly innovate inside their enterprise. It is a problem that is the biggest problem that's ever been in IT. There's $600 billion a year spent doing custom point-to-point integration, and we solve that with a product. So we put a product there instead of custom point-to-point code. The company has been around, as Ching was saying, since 2006. We're currently a little over 500 employees, growing very fast, big international presence, and a lot of the biggest banks, the biggest insurance companies, big manufacturers, big consumer packaged goods, all using our software. This is just a representative. We have over 800 customers at this point, a representative group of a few of the logos that we work with. And then last, I just want to say what we focus very heavily on is our culture. And Gary and I will spend a little bit of time talking about this, but to me, the most important thing, and I learned this, I had a professor here named Jim Collins who wrote some business books, Good to Great, Built to Last. I don't know if you guys have had a chance to read those, but his philosophy was it's all about who you get on the bus and how you build that culture from the ground up. And so we focus very, very heavily on that at Mulesoft, and I believe that's really the foundation to our success. So, so Gary and I are going to spend a little time together, just kind of Q&A.
Hello, everybody. Is my mic working? Yeah, good. So, I'm Gary Lowe. I'm delighted to be here today. We're, as Ching said, big supporters of the Basis Challenge. And I just, before we start with Greg, we had the honor this year of actually selling one of our companies that we backed, that was the winner of the 2002 Basis Challenge, Voltage Security. So, big milestone. And we also, nobody in this room will know, but we've actually backed one of the participants in the competition here. So it'll be interesting to see if it wins. It's unannounced at this point. So we really like it. Keep it coming. So we had the opportunity to back Mule when it was pre-revenue. It was an open source project, 2 founders, and mainly technical people, a lot of people overseas, when we realized we needed a CEO. Greg has a background. He was an engineering student out of North Carolina State. Your LinkedIn is kind of silent on what you did between that and coming here at Stanford for your MBA. So maybe I'll embarrass you by finding out what you did in those 2 years. But Greg went on to the first corporate development and head of marketing for Agile Software, a very prominent software company, and then was senior vice president of marketing for SpringSource, which was acquired by VMware for a nice amount. And he was actually introduced by one of the team members who was a VP of sales at that time. So Greg joined us 2009, 6 years ago, 20 employees, and probably scant revenue at the time. So Greg, since people in here are starting companies, 20 people, startup is basically starting from scratch. What do you do day one when you basically build a company that's now, I don't know if I can say it, near around 500 years?
Yeah, so when I joined, it was the beginning of 2009, which was a pretty tough economic period. So we had been at 50 employees. When I joined, we were at 20. And so the first thing I had to do was kind of pull the nose up. It was just a tough economic climate. We were selling to try to sell to banks, and they didn't have any money, and they were going bankrupt. So that was first thing, just kind of get stability within the company.
That's right. Actually, the company had got to 50, then there was the Sequoia Rest in Peace, and everybody kind of downsized because it was a bit of a winter. And actually, so you joined at that point, which, after there's a downsizing, it's hard to keep people together, let alone get them excited about growing.
Yeah, so the first thing, and I think this holds whether it was our company of 20 people or starting a company with 2 people, as I was saying, kind of leading into this, I think that the first thing, the number one thing that everybody should be thinking about is what they're trying to build from a cultural standpoint. At the end of the day, who you're bringing into your team is going to, really it's going to define your success. I mean, you can bring amazing people into a market space that's not very interesting and not be successful, but it's pretty hard if you go even into a fantastic space if you don't have the right team in place. So we started focusing at the very beginning on just really getting into what our hiring processes look like and setting what our vision was, what our culture was going to be, and the mission for the company. And then trying to make it, there's a lot of, after downsizing, there's a lot of concern, people worried about their jobs. We just kept everything very flat. People were sitting in offices, we got out of the offices, we did everything just kind of open, and basically just opened up the culture, made it very, very flat. So all of our board presentations, we presented to the company, we just started sharing everything with everybody and just said, hey, here's the situation, here's where we are. And I think once you do that, you can start really building the trust, and we have to do that at that time.
So you do spend a lot of time, how would you define the Mule culture? What is it, and maybe how's that changed over the 6 years that you've been there?
So I think most of the culture gets defined by who you bring on board. So there's 3 things we call them muleys. So there's 3 things we look for in a muley. So the first is a track record of achievement. And how many people here have taken an interviewing class? No, they don't, one person. So they pretty much don't exist, right? So nobody gets taught how to interview, but it's actually the most important skill you can ever have is learning how to interview well. Most people in interviews actually like to hear themselves talk. What we try and focus on is talking for about 5 minutes and listening for the other 95% of the time. So we look very much at, instead of the interview being about hearing ourselves talk or really drilling into brain teasers, we look for, tell us about your track record of achievement. We really want to hear what that person's done over a lifetime versus what we can assess in 1 hour. So we focus very much on that. We look for what we call good humans. I think that's fairly straightforward, but to me, good human is company first, team second, themselves third. And if you can find those people, they're going to work well with others. And then the last thing we look for is whip smart. So we're dealing with fairly complex technology. The industry's changing every day. Competitors are moving. We cannot have somebody who's a crank turner. Everybody in the company's got to be a thinker. It's got to be intellectually curious. So if we find those 3 things, that really defines it.
So one of the things I hear from the outside is it's really hard to get a job at Mulesoft. So I figured when I go to Glassdoor, they're going to have, job applicants are going to have a horrible experience, but actually they're rated very well. Smart interviewers, smart questions. But I think one of the things that I found that is very unique about Mulesoft is after everybody interviews with all the functional people and they cross-correlate them, they, basically for the first 5 years of the company, they had 1 additional interview that they had to take. And that was with Greg. It didn't matter if the person was in San Francisco or there's about 100 people in Argentina. Every single person before they're hired was interviewed by Greg. Why? That's a huge amount of your time, which you didn't have. You didn't get a lot of sleep. Why did you? What were you looking for? And
So last year I interviewed about 600 people. That was tough. At some point it doesn't scale, so we actually this year is the first time we actually had to take me out of the interviewing process for every position. I did it not because I'm the best interviewer, because I'm not. There are actually other people in the company that interview better than I do. But it's mostly because what we do is we have the interview, and then after all the interviews are done, we have a round table with a very detailed assessment form. And then that round table for 30 minutes, we're having basically, a trial on whether we want to hire somebody or not. And when you have new managers and new people in the company, that is the opportunity that you get as the leadership team to help them understand and really disseminate what your definition is of what top caliber people look like. And it's pretty easy, and I've been there before myself as a hiring manager. You know, you want so badly to hire that person. You need that spot filled. You're dying. You close your eyes and you kind of look sideways and convince yourself that that's going to be the right person. And you kind of need a little somebody on your shoulder as conscience saying, no, that's not the caliber of person that we're looking for in this company. And those roundtables are where we make that happen. And then by doing all those roundtables, we're actually kind of creating that next generation of interviewers and managers and leaders in the company, understanding what that bar is for us.
So one of the things that I hear from your staff is, you know, Greg is an intense guy. He gets the most out of everybody, but they all like working for you. But I asked him, what is it that, what do they mean by intense? And the first thing that they've been in common is that Greg leads by example. What are you doing there that they're saying to me that your leadership is leading by example? So what does that mean?
I think it embodies itself in a whole bunch of different ways. I mean, we have a culture that we say we're scrappy. And by that I mean, for the longest time we were finding, we have offices in London, Sydney, Buenos Aires, fairly large offices in each of those places, and we needed video conferencing gear. And I was finding it on eBay and meeting people in parking lots, or in Craigslist, and meeting people in parking lots and buying video conferencing gear. And it was saving like $10,000 per set of video conferencing gear. I felt like it was a decent use of my time to save $10,000 to go meet somebody in Sunnyvale on a Saturday afternoon. So it's that type of thing. It's you know, when I'm flying to Buenos Aires, you know, we all fly coach. I fly coach. When we have our company meetups, last year we had an amazing company meetup. We had almost 400 people in San Diego. We all share bedrooms. We don't share beds, but we share rooms, and we say, you know, if we can save $300,000 or $400,000 in hotel bills by staying, you know, doubling up in the rooms. Some people don't like it. It's a little uncomfortable. Usually by the end of the week, everybody says it was great, and they really got to know somebody, probably maybe a little more than they wanted to. But it's just all those little things. It's just kind of showing that we all are in this boat together. We have a hierarchy, we have to for decision making, but you know, we try to kind of behave as if, you know, we're all in the exact same place in terms of kind of rowing together.
So you did something this last Earth Day, which is another thing you don't see most CEOs doing, and you didn't know I was going to ask this question. Can you share what it is you did on Earth Day and maybe why?
Yeah. So I live in Portola Valley, and our office is in San Francisco, and we just hit a big financial number for the company. I can't share the exact number, but it was a big number. You'll get it by what I tell you what we did. And so we had an all-hands meeting, and I was congratulating the company. I was kind of tired that day, and frankly, I did a kind of crappy job of thanking people. And we always do a survey afterwards about, you know, how the all-hands meeting went, and a couple people responded. Greg just didn't seem that enthusiastic, and I felt really bad about that because it was this huge milestone, and I just hadn't delivered. Like, I hadn't given them the enthusiasm. So I was trying to think of what to do. I could eat that number of hamburgers. I could do that number of shots of tequila. You know, that would have killed me. And then I thought, okay, well, I'll just walk that many miles. So we, myself and the head of sales, starting at 1 in the morning, walked to San Francisco and got to the office at about 10 a.m. It was mostly just, walking, it's not that big a deal. But it was, you know, kind of just showing the company how much we appreciated all the work everybody had done.
It was pretty funny. They had headlights on. You know, it's 1:30 in the morning, going by Crystal Springs Reservoir, and then they'd stop the video, and it looked a little bit, what was that, 72 Hours movie? You know, where the guy has to bite his arm off. Yeah. by the time, what time did you arrive in the office?
It took 9 hours.
So 9 hours later, they show up in the office, and then did an all-hands, and just, you had another, thank you and appreciation for the effort of all the team. I think that's phenomenal.
The 9 hours is more a testimony to how slow we were, not how far we walked.
Okay. So back to 2009, 20 people. Culture is really important. You can tell Greg takes it very seriously. I'll just add, integrity. When I think of Greg, I think of somebody that's very integrity. And if there's things that are, in the gray or crossing the line, I mean, it's just, it's pretty straight. You know where you stand, and you don't go around corners. And I imagine that's something that filters down throughout a whole organization. But moving on, so people's very important. What else?
Yeah, so to me, I think the next thing, if you get the culture and the people right, it's attacking a big, huge problem that needs fixing. There's got to be, you want to attack something that has a lot of pain, and if you solve that problem, it's going to have huge impact, hopefully, on the world. And for us, we started out as an open source. It's called Enterprise Service Bus, which is an area part of integration technology. And what we did over time is we saw that mobility, SaaS, cloud, Internet of Things, they were all creating this need for a completely new layer for every kind of integration in a much more holistic way than just an enterprise service bus. And so we've just over time, some fairly large pivots, some modest pivots, positioned the company so that we're right in the center of the API space and have the opportunities, as I was saying earlier, to take this $600 billion of pain and turn it into a product.
Yeah, and my observation was Greg from day one, and still has always been very focused, in fact, anxious about the size of the addressable market and how to make it bigger and how to take advantage of trends that are going on so that you can basically get in front of greenfield opportunities and grow the market. So the company right now is in a great position where they have some competitors that are doing cloud connectivity. There's legacy competitors doing premise connectivity. There's some API players. But through the work that Greg and his team have done, they're really the only vendor with a single solution, single code base that can connect premise to premise, premise to cloud, cloud to cloud, and data application, mobile, and API integration. It's a huge vision, and you do a lot of credit for just pushing. And in the last board meeting we had, you just see it just keeps the vision just keeps getting bigger and bigger. So you started out as an open source. Since you started out, Mulesoft is it started as an open source company. It does control an open source project. I no longer think of the company as being an open source company. And a number of people here are thinking about starting business models. So open source in one way is a freemium model. You're giving away free product, and then you may have a commercial version or an upsell to get people to buy a commercial version. So maybe I'll just say, with your experience over the 6 years, if you're starting out, what can you convey to the people in the audience about freemium models versus paid models, and maybe what your experience was, and any pearls of wisdom? Sure.
So I had quite a bit of open source experience. So Spring Source was an open source Java framework. Mule is an open source project. The person on our board is MySQL head of sales. I used to work with a bunch of folks out of JBoss. So a lot of the big open source kind of plays have either done or been around. And certainly from an open source standpoint, I think the key there, if anybody here is thinking about doing something around open source, how that gets started is so critical. And you have to be so strategic about how to make sure that you have a plan for what you're going to do that is going to be open and what is going to be commercial and how you're going to monetize it. I think a lot of people just kind of feel like if I just keep going as fast as I can and get millions of users, I can figure out how to monetize it later, and that works for some settings in kind of the consumer world where you're trying to get eyeballs. In technology and open source, I think that's a pretty dangerous path to go down if you get to be very deliberate from the very beginning.
And I think this generalizes into freemium for mobile, free mobile, great adoption, but it's always a challenge about how to get people to pay for your paid version. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So maybe just one last. Right now, there's some blockbuster financings going on, and when you started, capital was a little more scarce, but you probably did rounds in the 15 million, smaller rounds in the early days, maybe even 10. And you were offered more money than you wanted to take. And so even when rounds are smaller, you said, I don't want that much money. Why?
Yeah, so if you have something great, you're always going to have, at least in this market, you're always going to have a lot more capital chasing you than you need. And so the first thing that I think is just so critical, it gets back to that hiring, is who's going to be your partner? Who are you inviting onto the board? What's that going to do for your board dynamics? So that's the first thing you have to figure out, is making sure that you have the right kind of board dynamics that you're bringing on board. And the second thing I would say is, just be careful about not getting too greedy about valuations and amount of money. I think if you get too greedy there, there's a lot of long-term repercussions for that if you get out ahead of your skis on valuation. Obviously, nobody wants to take massive dilution, so you have to be watchful of dilution and know that you may have multiple rounds of dilution you have to pay attention to. But I think you got to keep it in perspective. We've had times when we could have taken a round that was going to be a 6% dilutive round, or push higher and had an 8% dilutive round, and we kind of go for a 2% difference in dilution. Let's pick somebody who we think might be a better partner. I just think that's a smarter long-term way of thinking about it.
Thanks. And I think this time we'd like to open it up to questions from the audience for Greg. And there may be a microphone out there, or you can just shout it out. Yes, thank you.
Greg, you were talking about your